Hi everyone, greetings from National Skills Network. These days, I think all of us are discussing and debating about how to bring education, employability, and employment closer. So in case you have been tracking the developments around these areas and the sector which is, emerging, which is work integrated education in India, one of the leaders in this sector is TeamLease. And today we have with us Mr. Sumit Kumar, who is the Chief Business Officer for Degree Apprenticeships at TeamLease. So welcome to this talk, Sumit.
Thank
And
you, sir.
as I was telling you, we do follow a lot of updates from TeamLease on degree apprenticeships. So today we wanted to invite you and have a chat around what is your vision for promoting degree apprenticeships, and how do you define degree apprenticeships? And maybe you can tell us more about how the TeamLease approach is different from perhaps other apprenticeship models that India is currently adopted and following.
Sure. Thank you so much, Madhuri, for having me here. If I were to explain what is degree apprenticeship in a very simple language, it's the apprenticeship which leads to a degree is actually degree apprenticeship, right?
Yeah.
See, the whole idea for having this degree apprenticeship was to make education more meaningful and also making apprenticeship more aspirational, or let's say making vocational education aspirational. Usually there are not many takers for apprenticeship. The reason being because it's not the first choice. Why it's not the first choice? Because they want to get into the higher education. If you were to look at for the people who are enrolled in the higher education, what they lack is employability. So there's definitely a mismatch, when it comes to the expectation versus the reality, what is happening in both the sides of thing. So the idea was that can we integrate both together, so that can we make it more aspirational for the youth to take up apprenticeships, which also for the apprentices, that how we can promote or kind of which can lead to their vertical mobility as well, vertical and horizontal mobility, which I'll explain you how does that happen.
Yeah.
And at the same time, how do we ensure that with the work integration in the regular education, how do we ensure the employability factor of the youth? Because I think every survey or the report suggests that the employability factor of the youth is a major concern at this point of time, be it technical or non-technical. So with that as an agenda, we were pursuing for degree apprenticeship for some time, and thankfully even the new education policy was a boon for us, because it came up with a very clear-cut guidelines that how UGC came up with that guideline that how the degree apprenticeship could be implemented, and this was more to do with credit-based system.
Yeah.
So it's a blend of on-the-job plus the theory, and you are allocated credits for every hour that is spent in learning. Traditionally, learning has always been confined to a classroom.
Yeah.
But we think, can we look at as on the job itself as a learning? How do you recognize it? Can you incentivize through the credit system? Can you monitor that, assess the people, and then award them qualification? So that's the way it gets executed. So, as I said, that from the TeamLease perspective, we've been pursuing it for some time. For all these years, we were doing it as a top-up, where somebody who's doing an apprenticeship, we could top it up with a degree program. But today, with the new guidelines of the UGC guidelines for degree embedded apprenticeship system, I think it's become even more, I would say, more feasible to offer these degree apprenticeship in a blended way, so that it is actually beneficial for the youth. And we're taking only from one side of it. Let's talk about from the industry, because there's always been a complaint that we are not, the education system is not churning out job ready people. But there has been very minimal or no involvement of the industry in creating these the talent for themselves. I think they always resort in buying the talent. So I think that whole aspect of industry now getting involved along with the academia to curate the programs, and also being actively involved in implementation of these programs, which will actually help them create a talent supply chain.
Yeah.
So I think it, on one hand, it solves the employability crisis for the youth, and on the other hand, it addresses the skill crisis for the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like the big picture. You're kind of putting in the context and the perspective from TeamLease, how you have interpreted it. And as we are aware, even in other countries like UK and others, they do have this degree apprenticeship kind of a program. But when you look at the Indian context, I think there are many new things that are being thrown at the youth and their parents. One after the other. First of all, apprenticeship itself, right? It's a new thing for many, and the idea of work integration, because we have seen education as something not connected with work, like getting a degree is a goal in itself, or higher education being a goal in itself. So in this way, how would you address these issues, like at the ground level, to make these initiatives successful? Maybe you can give us an example how it is done, so till now, so that others also get to know about.
Sure. Sure. See, you rightly, you mentioned that, there's a whole lot of concerns. I would not say challenges, but there are definitely concerns which is there with the society, with the parents, with the students, And, we need to realize that, while there is a dropout of students in every phase, or let's say every stage of their education, we say that about 265 lakh kids take class 10th exam, about 105 lakh fail. Out of the 160 lakh kids who take class 12th exam, 80 lakh fail. And out of the 80 lakh kids, only 50% go to the next level of education.
Yeah.
So there's a dropout which is happening at every stage. Now, there are two reasons for people to get dropped out. One is possibly they are not academically inclined. And second is that possibly they are not, they cannot afford higher education. So, but how do we ensure that these people make a decent career? Yeah. And whereas decent career, can we in some way or the other offer them a formal employment? And I'm stressing on the word formal employment for the simple reason that, our India's unemployment rate is anywhere between 6 to 7%. The balance of the people are employed. But the major concern is that they are employed in an informal sector, which means that they are not getting the minimum wages or the due, benefits which they are entitled to. And which is also leads to the exploitation of the people. And if people are not able to earn minimum wages, then there's a concern about the livelihood. There's also, which impacts the purchasing power of our people, and which ultimately impacts the consumption. And that has an economic impact. Yeah. So the idea is that how do we make it more, aspirational? How do we make it more conducive? How do we make quality education accessible? Which can result ultimately to a socio-economic growth. So when we say with degree apprenticeship, it's learning by doing, it's earning while learning, it is learning with modularity, it's a learning with flexibility. Now let me explain each one of this. When we talk about learning by doing, it's like obviously you are acquiring skills by actually doing it. So it straight away leads to the employability enhancement. Right. When we say it is earning while learning, it's the fact that you're able to earn a stipend is the reason that you're able to sustain your education and sustain yourself as well. When we talk about learning with flexibility, here we're saying that it's a multimodal delivery mechanism. It's not traditionally done in a closed environment. We're talking about multi-classrooms or multi-learning mechanism, which starts with it's on-the-job learning, it is on-site learning, it's online learning, and on-campus. Now, on-site is a little innovative in amongst all the things that I've mentioned, where we say that because these people are engaged with on-the-job learning, and then for them to come back to campus becomes difficult. It's not practical. Yeah. For the establishment to leave them because it impacts their productivity hours, and even for these apprentices to engage with these studies and academics, because it's after clocking in so many hours of on-the-job training, it may not be feasible to give attention to theory. So can we say that can the trainers or the faculty members visit the premise of these establishments and conduct the classes at the establishment itself, which becomes very feasible. Also, what we resort to is an instructor-led training, which is this on-site, but it could also be done virtually for a scattered cohort here. So that's the reason we say it's learning with flexibility. And when we say it's modular in nature, is that the entire course is a combination of 6 modules, which span about 3 years, and every module or completion of every module fetch you with a qualification. So let's say today the first 6 months will fetch you with a certificate, another 6 months will fetch you a diploma, another 1 year will get you an advanced diploma, and then ultimately you get a degree. So which means that somebody wants to opt out has an option of come back and start from where, because it's all credit based, learning. So that's the benefit of degree apprenticeships, which makes it very feasible both for the youth to take it up, and even for the employers to execute the program.
Yeah. So this is like currently what is being followed in BWork degree also, right? The flexible model.
Yes, but I would say, Madhuri, that it's a notch different from BWork. See, BWork was that you spend a substantial amount of time in the campus and you do about 6 months of apprenticeship. Now, the 6 month is not, I would say, good enough time period for somebody to acquire. And somebody anyway still has to go through the academics process. As I said, that people may not be inclined towards academics. Here, it's a blend. It's a as per the architecture or the guidelines which have been defined by the UGC. With that architecture, we can have at least 30% in the theory, 70% could be on the job. And it's not necessary that it has to be sequential. It can be simultaneously, as long as you're clocking in those many hours. And credits are awarded accordingly. So I would say that probably from the curriculum point of view, there would be a lot of similarities, but from the delivery point of view, and I think this is a far more practical way of doing a degree, a vocational degree.
Okay. So what about you were just talking about credits. Is there a need to make it like NSQF compliant?
Absolutely.
Are you also doing those things for the course?
Absolutely. It is very much NSQF inclined. In fact, when I said that, how it also helps apprenticeship to grow, or which leads to the horizontal mobility for them, is because they're exposed to different QPs, the qualification pack. It's a combination of multiple QPs, and hence, by the way, when we were developing this program, it had to be taken to NCVET.
Okay.
Because academically, yes, it was possible. The academic innovation we were able to do, but to make it more compliant with the regulation and get a stamp and approval from the regulators as well, we took it to NCVET. And today, when a person gets into the program, it's typically between 2 to 3 or 3 around. And by the time the person passes out, it reaches the level of NSQF level 6. So that's the growth. And the level of QPs gets covered in this program.
Okay. So now my next point would be to know more from you about there are other apprenticeship schemes in India like NAPS and NATS, and often we, from our channel, we try to clarify what is the difference. Like one is from the Ministry of Education, one is from the Ministry of Skill Development, and this I'm assuming the degree apprenticeships again go to the Ministry of Education, right?
No, actually.
No.
No. So I'll tell you why. See, if you were to look at, yes, there's Ministry of Education, there is Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Now, look at the kind of people who are getting enrolled. So MSDE, largely it is the undergraduates. Usually have the 12th, even the 5th class is a eligible criteria for that. You've got ITIs. To the extent, even diploma, now even graduates are possible under your optional trade that we look into the MSD side of it. If you were to look at your NATS, which is under Ministry of Education, we talk about the graduate apprenticeship training and we talk about diploma apprenticeships, right? These are the people who are already attained the qualification of a graduate, and then they do a 1 year of apprenticeship to become employable or before they're employed. So the difference here is that is more for a diploma and a graduate. Once they've attained that qualification, they then go through the apprenticeship process. The other side of it, the ministry skill side of it, is usually people who are undergraduates or school dropouts, or let's say just technical diploma holders or diploma holders. They get in doing apprenticeship, which leads to a certificate. In fact, both it leads to a certificate. When you talk about degree apprenticeship, it's the process which leads to a degree. Okay, so which means that it would still reside a lot to do with undergraduates And we can do degree apprenticeship both in an optional trade as well as a designated trade.
Okay.
So I would say that it will be more on the MSDE side of it rather than the MOE. Though it is a higher education linkage, but it's meant for the undergraduates. And at the end of the entire process, you get a qualification of a degree instead of just a certificate.
I think this is a very nice thing, which is kind of integrating both skills and education, that is knowledge and skills, I would say. And also NATS, I think, is more for polytechnics and technology, and I mean engineering graduates and technology.
Again,
right?
Today, even again, Madhuri, even in the non-technical areas, we can be enrolled under the NATS.
Okay.
You could be a non-technical diploma holder. You could be a non-technical graduate. You can still do an apprenticeship, or an employer can still do an apprenticeship under the non-technical for these qualifications. So it's no longer just for technical. There were amendments which were made, I think, about 2-3 years back. Now even non-technical also can get.
Yeah. So it's more driven by the QPs. It's more driven by the levels, I guess. All
That's
these, I think that's probably, it may converge sometime. We don't know how things will shape up. Now, since you have told us in detail about how the degree apprenticeship works, can you give us maybe an example, how you collaborate, how you partner with organizations, how exactly it is implemented, and also for the students, how they can enroll. And later I might ask you about how do we present it to the parents, because they play such an important role.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, Madhuri, traditionally the education or the learning has always been bilateral. Where there, let's say, for example, there's a student at the university. Even for the apprenticeship, there is an apprentice and an employer. That's how it gets executed. But for the degree apprenticeship, it's a very different arrangement. It's a tripartite arrangement, that I would say that. So there is an industry, there is academia, and then there is the candidate or the youth. And we have to follow the dual system here, wherein, because I have to follow the UGC guidelines, because it's higher education. So I need to have a body of higher education, which is a university or a college, right? Which would be executing the theory part of it. Then I've got the industry, which would be doing the apprenticeship, the on-the-job part of it. And then there is the youth, which has to get enrolled for that program from the university, and they have to have a contract with the employer for the apprenticeship, because ultimately everything has to happen within the realm of the Apprenticeship Act. And there's a partnership between the employer and the academia because of the curriculum, and also because of the assessments that they have to do jointly, basis which the certificates get allocated, or qualifications get allocated. So that's the innovation, I would say, or the uniqueness which comes about in executing degree apprenticeship. It's no longer bilateral, it's a trilateral arrangement under which it gets executed. So coming to, yes, there are a lot of, your institutes, they need to now adopt these work integrated programs with the new education policy now getting implemented. Today, every academic body would be required to do these kind of programs. And to do those programs, I think what they also need to right now emphasize is on the industry partnerships.
Right.
And likewise, even the industry today will have to partner with the academics to look at how they can develop talent or build talent. Right? I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it's not happening at the scale at which is required. And I think now with the policies being in place, it becomes even more easier. And it's no longer just there is a industrial visit or there is a guest lecture from an industry person happening. I think it has to go to different levels now, where that academia and industry partnership has to happen. Coming to the second aspect that you mentioned about the parents, because they play a very vital role in deciding their children's education, and they influence a lot. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. I would say that while there was a lot of work to be done, even at the spreading the awareness about apprenticeship, but I feel that now, where there's a higher education linkage with the apprenticeship, I would suggest that there would be more openness and acceptance from the society to have their children enrolled for apprenticeship.
Yeah. Yeah, you just mentioned about awareness. I think that's where we from NSN are striving hard every day, to do as much as possible in creating awareness. One issue which I have always faced when we talk about apprenticeships, or when I heard people speaking, the word itself is very difficult for many people to remember, apprenticeship, right? And it still has that hangover of manufacturing sector, of a technical manual job, whereas internship is a little more accepted. Like many engineering students, they do some project and call it an internship, or there are very serious internships. So is there something on these lines also, you think, is that also coming in the way of making this more acceptable, as a way of work integrated learning, which mostly also has a stipend attached to it, which is a very positive thing, right? In addition to making them employable.
Yes, yes. So, Madhuri, about maybe 8 years back, if you were to look at, the stipends were not so aspirational at all. They were literally slave wages which were being paid out. And you're right that at that point of time, it was still largely meant to be for the manufacturing or for the technical trades only. But with the optional trade getting introduced, stipends getting bettered, and even after that, in 2019, again, the stipends got revised, the rules got introduced, which make it very feasible for the employers to take this apprentices in different job roles. And also because the stipends got revised, it becomes even more desirable, I would say or I would say feasible for the students to take up apprenticeships. Yes, while that has happened, there's still a lot of communication that needs to go out. I think there's a lot of awareness, but more so, making just a campaign, it's more to do with looking at some live examples.
Yes.
When they would say more and more children in the society, in the neighborhood, who are taking up apprenticeship, then it becomes like a trend.
Yeah.
I would still say that the trend for apprenticeship has picked up. Last year, we ended up with about 5.5 lakh apprentices, which has been about 6 to 7% growth over last 2 years.
Yeah.
So you can see that traction building up, and that too, the traction is building up in the optional trade because that's where the jobs are getting created. That's where there is a demand for skilled people.
Yeah.
And I think it's time that both the sides, whether it's the youth and the employers, need to raise or come out of their inhibitions and start taking apprentices or engaging with apprenticeships as such to, as I said, overcome their employability crisis and channelize towards formal employment and to overcome their skill crisis. Just to give you, substantiate this, right, that we've been in the business of apprenticeship for now last 8 years. We've done about 6 lakhs apprentices. About 75% of them have got certified. Of those certified people, 98% today are in the formal employment who are earning a wage premium of 40 to 45% in cash and 100% with the benefits that are entitled with employment.
Yes.
So it is very much, that how apprenticeship can channelize youth towards formal employment. I think there's no better way than apprenticeship.
Right, that's true. Yeah, so to close this conversation, I would request you to perhaps send us a message, to the youth, because I think they are the ones, who can drive this. And when we are talking about 1 million apprenticeships in India, and there are so many targets and many aspirations around the word apprenticeship itself, what would be your message to students mostly?
Yeah, I think my first, recommendation to them would be that please be open. Don't be closed for the idea of apprenticeship. It's ultimately you're gaining experience. It's gaining experience, and while you're gaining experience, you're also earning stipend. And there are plenty of options today available to do apprenticeship. Even if you were to go to the apprenticeship portal, you could look at the all the opportunities there. Even we have our portal called apprentices.in. So we are also trying to bridge that gap between, how do we match the supply with the demand. So there are options available, and please be open to the area of getting any work exposure.
Right.
Second thing is that please be absolutely adaptive to the situation and also be willing to adopt. I think these are adoption and adaptation are the two things that they should always be willing to. And the emphasis on the learnability aspect. I think these are the elements which all the employers are look forward to from when they're evaluating a candidate. So that would be my advice to the youth to take up as they enter into the labor market, I would say.
Yeah, that's right. For their first job, I think these are really precious words from a very senior person who has spent so many years in promoting apprenticeships and also implementing them. And also, thank you so much for giving us the complete picture of degree apprenticeship, because as I said, there is a bit of confusion around the terminology itself, which you helped us clarify right now. Thanks a lot. And we would be in touch with you to learn more and
Anytime.
also share updates as and when we get them. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank you so much, Madhuri.
Thank you.